Welcome back to what is still called Left, Right, and Center. It's just me and Nate again, and we're here to have a nice conversation on many miscellaneous topics that hopefully you enjoy. Some of the big ones will likely include some Chauvin trial and some Biden policies, and maybe a little bit of voter issues. Voter what's the word I'm looking for? Thank you.
Yeah.
You got to save me on that. Sometimes
Jim, you can just say Jim Crow. It's okay. It's
voter Jim Crow.
No, just Jim Crow. Just Jim Crow. Or Jim Eagle, as it's known now.
Yeah. So it should be a pretty relaxed stream. We got some good feedback from our last week's one, so we're going to try and keep that going while it's just the two of us. Be relaxed, just go with the flow, one topic to the next. So nothing too serious, but hopefully you learn something from it. Hopefully we learn something from each other. Yeah. You want to start us off?
Yeah. So uncharacteristic of me, I'll just go ahead and do the funny first. I am a bit of a libertarian on a couple things, especially the war on drugs. So I saw this on Reddit and I thought this was hilarious. It's for those who are listening, it's a meme of cops standing around, and you know how cops, like, they always take pictures with their haul of drugs, right?
Yeah.
They got the local drug dealer, so they line all the bags up, and then they put all the money, and then they lay out all the pistols, and they have his phones here. They got some pipes and whatnot. And it's you can see from this picture, it's all weed, right?
Yeah.
It's just big bags of weed, and the title of it is "When You Rob Somebody," and then post pictures of it on Facebook. And it's not going to be too long, I think, until this type of thing, especially with weed, is no more. What do you think about granting clemency to people who are serving sentences for, drug offenses?
Yeah, that's such a tough one. I get both sides, right? The one side says, whatever they're in prison for is no longer illegal, therefore they shouldn't be in prison for it, right? But the other side is they made the choice to break the law when it was illegal,
right?
And so they did what they made the bad choice then. They're being punished for that choice, not for what they're able to do now. It's like saying, you did something you weren't allowed to based on age, like pre-18, and then as soon as you turn 18, you can get out.
So there's a couple things with that. So there's an interesting facet of our law, which is ex post factos, and it means that you can't be charged with the crime after a new law has been put in, right? So you can't say, like, you did this thing in the past, we've now made it a law that's illegal, and now we can arrest you, right? That's ex post factos. You can't do that. It's kind of interesting because, granting leniency would be the reverse ex post factos. It's like, well, it was a law when you did it, so you're in jail, but now it's not a law, so we let you out. So, I mean, I can see where people who are tidy, I could see maybe conservatives saying, like, them's the shakes, like, you deserve what you got. You broke the law. You serve your time and get out. I would say, I think I'm for. Like, I would 100% be for clemency, but the one wrinkle, legally speaking, is that most of the time when people are in on simple drug charges, usually it's that they're not usually, but very, very often it's that they plead down from a larger crime, right? So, it speaks for itself. But you kind of need to review each and every case to make sure you're not letting out somebody who is in there for another reason, but he's in there on the marijuana charge.
I was going to say something along those lines, that I think that each one should be reviewed independently, but I would also generally be on board. And I think that although it's the reverse of that, it moves towards what as a society we look at, which is individualism and freedoms. So on the one hand, it's like, I'm punishing you for something that wasn't illegal when you did it. You made a good choice, but I'm still going to punish you for it. That doesn't really make much sense. And the other side is, I'm going to remove a punishment because we now no longer feel that what you did warrants punishment. And both of those make sense to me. Like,
yeah, you know what I think it is that we want what's moral to be reflected in our laws, basically. And so it's like, it feels right to say if they're in jail on drug charges, they should get out after we change the law. That feels right because like it's like morally speaking, most people right now feel like it's not a moral wrong. And it feels like the laws are not a reflection of the the underlying moral sort of pact that we have in the country, right? Where we all decide that things are generally bad or generally good. I think weed is just way low on people's list, and it seems to be. And from what I understand, it is actually a relic of oppression of black people, right? I mean, weed was essentially demonized to get at specific black people. It was a big scandal at the time. I recommend looking into it, the origins of that, and so it makes it all the more bullshit. And I think the left and right can definitely come together on this one, hopefully.
Yeah, I remember something about that when I was reading into. I think we were doing a podcast, or I was just having a conversation with a friend about legalizing marijuana and where the original illegalization of it came from.
I wonder if it was you that told me that then.
Maybe. I have an amazing memory and a terrible memory at the same time. I can remember there's some things that just lock in, but stuff like that.
Yeah, I've got a box of magic cards in the other room, and I could tell you what each and every single one of those cards does. It's like thousands and thousands of them, but I can't remember what I had for breakfast yesterday morning.
Nerd. I mean, all right. So next, this one I thought was funny. Came across it today. A little play on some old comedy movies here. But so for those just listening, it says when you're severely injured, but you remember you're uninsured and live in the U.S. And it's got a picture from Monty Python. The guy with his arm cut off says, "'Tis but a scratch."
Yeah.
But there's obviously some truth behind it. Like, and that's part of, I think you've had that argument before. That's part of your argument where by having to pay for medical care, you reduce the amount of wasted care, maybe.
Yeah,
I'm putting words into your mouth here a little bit, but
yeah, no, that's fine. I'm okay with that characterization.
It gets used,
Yeah, I think you just got to be careful about artificially depressing the market, or if there's a scarcity. For example, if there's a scarcity of care, which makes it expensive, if you start messing around with that with the government, you usually have you always have unintended consequences. So. And that's a big, complicated topic, but, not to go straight on that one right away. I enjoyed that movie, but have you ever tried to watch anything else Monty Python?
I've not been a big British humor person or something. I find them okay, but not some of my friends.
I feel that. What about you ever seen Mr. Bean? I remember I was in the Navy, and he's that really odd looking. They're all kind of odd looking. Sorry, all my British fans, but I remember. I knew that Mr. Bean was big in Europe, and so when I was in the Navy, I was having like a movie night with friends, and I was like, "Hey guys, this is real big in Britain. Let's watch this." And I popped that shit in, and everybody fell asleep instantly. It was strange humor. So
Yeah, I never did get into it either. But I have a weird I'm not a big fan of like Will Ferrell humor as an example.
Oh, I'm not really either.
A lot of people I know love his humor as well. There's something about I like him fine, and I don't mind. I just it doesn't hit me the same way.
I kind of take that back. Anchorman was hilarious. Anchorman was a really good movie.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed that.
That's some of that just over the top dumb type of humor.
Look, I get it, but to me that was probably quintessential. Like that was the if you were to do that over the top dramatic slapstick comedy, like that's how you do it. Like that's the best it can get right there is Anchorman. Other than that, not really my cup of tea.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know.
All right. I got something else interesting. This one kind of wound me up a little bit. This is weird times we live in. So, okay. So Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson is a man that I definitely idolize. I look up to him. I think he has a message that is something that's addressing something that's severely lacking in the national discourse, and that message basically is, among many other things, it's clean yourself up, get your life together, make your bed, clean your room, organize yourself, and then, that will set you up to be able to act in the world. It's basically find the heaviest load that you can carry and carry it, which is just a call to be responsible and upright and, becoming a part of your community. And he's very, 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 very controversial. So I'm trying to, give him a fair shake since Chris isn't here. He's definitely a darling of the libertarians and of the right and of a lot of classical liberals. But needless to say, the far left absolutely hates him. Okay. So that's a very, very basic setup for this article that I'm about to show you. So Jordan Peterson is shocked by Captain America villain Red Skull espousing 10 rules for life. Okay. And for those of you who don't know, Jordan Peterson has a book out called 12 Rules for Life. Okay. And so basically what's happening here is that Ta-Nehisi Coates, who is he's a far left racial essentialist. He's basically kind of like a race baiting far leftist. And I can get away with saying that because Chris isn't here. Who has been hired to write Marvel comics. And I believe he was working on Black Panther a little bit. And I haven't seen any of that. And I don't actually read comics. So I couldn't tell if it's good or bad. But when he started doing Captain America, he made Red Skull, who is the villain, right? He's a Nazi villain. He made him into Jordan Peterson, right? And try to zoom in on this picture a little bit here. This is a screen cap of one of the comic panels, and it's an image of a laptop, and on the laptop it's a picture of the Red Skull, and he has a caption next to him. It says 10 rules for life, chaos and order, Carl Luger's genius, and the feminist trap, right? So it's a very, very obvious dig at Jordan Peterson. So Ta-Nehisi Coates literally made Jordan Peterson into the Red Skull, who is a Nazi, the villain in Marvel, one of the villains. And it just blew my mind. And Jordan Peterson found out about this naturally, and he basically, I'm going to paraphrase, he tweets out, "What the fuck?" Oh, and it's gone. I guess I'm loading it, but yeah, he was like, he was basically
he's immortalized,
like,
dude. He's immortalized. Why is it strange?
Because that's like, okay, so you come out with a message for people to be responsible, take responsibility for yourself in your life.
That's not his only message or what he's really known for. That's not how he got famous and popular.
Okay, so that's how a lot of people characterize.
It's his.
What would you say?
I'd say he's most well known for his controversial discussions on equality, like women, the differences between men and women, and other things along those lines is how he got famous.
So the political aspect?
And I generally agree with his points of view on most of that stuff. It's just not what the far left wants to say, and it was not what they believe, and so it makes sense that they look at him like a villain and
cast him as a Nazi.
I mean, so yeah, the Red Skull was a Nazi, but he was only a Nazi because back when these the books were being written and when Captain America's main timeline was, that was who the main villain was.
I got you. So you're telling me that the main villain, the Nazi-esque villain, is Jordan Peterson?
No, I'm saying they're modernizing the villains. They're making them like, yeah, in the core story, the Red Skull is that, but that's not what they're saying.
It's just absurd to the nth degree that there's a couple absurd things. This is Marvel now. Like this was the bastion of, American everything, American ideas. And now it's given into woke, racial supremacists on the left.
Disney owns it. What do you expect?
That's true. Well, I'm going to disavow that statement so that we don't all get, so we don't get swatted. if the stream drops offline, they're rating us.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as big of a fan of Jordan Peterson as you, and I disagree with some of his core points, but for the most part, I find him to be fairly on point, and even for things that I do disagree with him on, he's approaching them from a data-driven, logical perspective. in my opinion, on almost anything I've ever seen him talk about. So I have a lot of respect for the way he approaches things. Sometimes I may interpret things different than him, but
Yeah.
you know, um, yeah, I think
So it's crazy, man. So the Red Skull, he's basically a villain. So in this particular whatever MCU or whatever universe this one particularly is, the Red Skull, he's a villain who's online and that takes in young men, and young men go to him, and then he basically teaches them that there's actually a quote here. He basically teaches them that they're oppressed and that they're, that they need to fight back and that they'll find meaning in fighting back. Right. And that's essentially the Red Skull. And that's what, that's what Ta-Nehisi Coates thinks of Jordan Peterson. It's really kind of funny because that I paraphrased right there, but that's basically the message that the left is telling their people. It's almost like they're projecting that onto Jordan Peterson. Right. They would be telling black people and oppressed people everywhere. They're saying the world is against you. You need to fight back, and that will provide you with the meaning in your life. So I thought it was rather unself-aware of them to say that about the person they're trying to make the villain. And I honestly wonder what Ta-Nehisi Coates would say. I feel like he probably just catch that contradiction. I'm sure he would have something intelligent to say, but because he's a very successful, smart person. But that's to me that's glaring.
Ta-Nehisi Coates to me sounds like some place I'd go to buy some really expensive mink jackets.
Like an island in the Gulf of Mexico, maybe. I don't know. Teotihuacan. Yes. Aztec name.
So I think when we talked in the past, I'm changing a completely 180 or 360 or 720 or whatever, whatever kickflip you want to do. I don't think that's actually this go together. But anyway,
they do.
When Trump was in office, I remember we had several conversations about the market and economics and other things. And I know we had a few discussions about who was responsible for the market being where it was.
Eternal debate.
And so generally, your point or your belief was that Trump had played a major part in it. And the stance of a lot of the Republicans throughout his presidency was obviously because he is president and the market's doing better, that he's responsible for that. So for my next one, I just wanted to go out and say that Biden is better than Trump, apparently, at setting market records. What do you think?
I'll go ahead and use I'll use the play that the market doesn't reflect the economy. How's that sound? Right out of right out of the bookshelf. There you go.
So not only is he doing better than Trump did at any point in his presidency, he did it by bringing us out of one of the deepest drops that we've had.
No way. I've had the most growth. You know what? This I'm not even gonna concede or not concede. I'll actually mostly concede, like whatever. I don't really know how much.
I actually don't want the concession. I don't believe that Biden has a lot of responsibility for this.
I can tell.
I just wanted to play the other side of the coin.
So I'll swivel to something where I know that he's taking credit for stuff where he shouldn't be. It's kind of funny, like. Remember he had he pledged to have 100 million vaccines by the first 100 days, and then they so I think like it was crazy. Like the first thing that he said is that I'm going to get us up to 1 million vaccines a day, right? I pledge to get us up to 1 million vaccines a day, right? And it's like, okay, when he made that statement during his inauguration, we were already pumping out 100 million vaccines. I'm sorry, 1 million vaccines a day, right? And then he said, and then after that. After he didn't get called on that, because
no, we looked at the math on that because that was a point you made at some point in our podcast, and it wasn't as high as you were touting it to be.
No, but on that day, so it was a spiky spike, right? But on that, it just happened to be that on that particular day, the average was still lower than 1 million, but on that day, it literally was 1 million out, and then the average very quickly afterwards got up to 1 million a day. So, but then after that, even after he should have gotten called on that and he didn't. Then he was like, all right, we're going to do 100 million vaccines in the first 100 days. And he was already projected to exceed that, right? If the graphs, like if the line kept going, because it looked very, very linear, and as far as I know, it still was, we were going to exceed that anyways, right? So he was essentially like, there's a parade marching towards victory, and he jumps out in front of it and it's like, yep, I'm in charge of this parade. This is all me, right? And then he upped it to like 200 million. He's like, oh, well, we exceeded that. It's like, no, you didn't do anything. You didn't do anything. You set up like 6 vaccination sites between, the time you said you're going to do this and now. Are you pulling up a graph?
When was inauguration?
January 20th or 19th? I think it was 20th.
Yeah, you'd think I would know that after doing this podcast, but so, what was I doing? There we go. So here's a graph. Quick search. Don't know how accurate. Didn't do any background or whatever, but January 20th, somewhere right in there. So to me, it looks like pretty steady through presidency, but really. I would expect there would take some time. So like even if we saw it kind of continue here and then shoot up or something like right in here,
yeah,
I would expect that you would see, some lag time between becoming president, being able to change policies and get things in place. But to me, this looks, fairly linear, and you would have expected it to continue up.
Yep, you would have. So it looks like it wasn't quite linear there. Yep.
Yeah, if everything stayed linear. So, not that his policies caused this or Trump's did or whatever. Who knows? I don't know exactly what was going on here. It could have just been. I know that there was some supply issues for a while. Some of the manufacturers were really having a hard time getting supplies made, and then they lost a bunch of stuff due to temperature problems and things. So maybe that was this time frame. I don't know.
A lot of rules were too restrictive, so they couldn't. They were like losing stuff. They would open a freezer of them, and then they couldn't give it out to people because the laws were restricting that.
So this, I'm 100% speculating. I'd have to look in to see what happened, but this is a pretty nice little spike. I think.
I know. We should keep that up.
Is this when everybody was able to get it?
Yeah, so. I always, you see those on the COVID graph too. That's always when, some intern had some Excel file with all the data, hidden on his desktop, and his boss asked for it a month ago, and well, he didn't have it, but now we're adding it to the totals now. So it's like, well, we didn't actually do 4 million. We just
have you gotten a shot yet?
No, I haven't.
Yes, I've gotten my first one. I've had it for 2 weeks, I think, on Friday now. So I think that could be close to when they started allowing. That might be what happened when they started allowing everybody to go get it.
Now,
because it was like mid March, I think.
Now, can you speak in 5G now?
No. So you gotta get the second shot for that. I'm only up to 3G.
Oh man. All right, I want the COVID 5G conspiracy theorist to sound off in the chat. I need it. I want to hear it. Tell me why it's real.
Did you see Ryan Reynolds' post?
Yes. Yeah. What did he say? He said I'm getting my 5G now or something like that. What did he say?
Yeah, something like that. And as the owner of, I think he's still the owner of Mint Mobile. That's a double. It's a double comedy there.
All right, my turn, right?
Yeah.
All right, so here's a little bit of millennial humor. All right, this is the meme. Hey, for any boomers out there, the meme at Gen X too. The meme for millennials is that we're all depressed. We're all chronically depressed.
What's the millennial age bracket there?
Older than me and younger than me.
Oh, what the fuck?
A little ways out there. I think it's like late 80s, like 88, 89, maybe 90 to maybe 2000.
Generations chart. Let's see. I don't know. This could be completely inaccurate.
So you get different answers everywhere, and I'm not just saying that to cover my guess. Like you Google it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm sure that's true. Okay, so baby boomers says 46 to 64. Wow. Gen X 65 to 80.
Everything.
Millennials. Yeah, millennials and Gen Y is all the same thing, I guess. 81 to 96. So me and you are generation partners.
Hey,
partner.
Boomer's got like half a century. It's like,
Boomers got 20 years. Millennials got 25. So,
God damn.
yeah. Then you have the Zoomers, the Gen Z, 97 to 2012, and then
Alpha. God damn.
Generation Alpha, 2010 to mid 2020s. So,
Tim, what happens when you turn 30, man? Because I'm about to do that. You get anything?
No, I don't think I noticed much going on until about 34 or 5, and then all of a sudden, like, alcohol crushes you for days, not just it's.
Listen, I've already got some of that, but I feel like I'm finally at the age where my higher insurance rates actually probably should come down now. It's like I probably should have had them all the way up.
Dude, they're probably watching this podcast and they're like, we are never lowering that dumbass.
Yeah.
Ever.
No, please.
All right, so what's your joke? What's your millennial joke?
All right, so my millennial humor here. So, and I'm going to tie this into politics, go figure, because that just, happens to be what we do. But, all right, it's a tweet, because that's a meme now. It's just a tweet. But if you knew me before my 20s, you never actually knew me. You knew season 1 me. We were severely underfunded, and the writing team was going through a lot. And
yeah, that doesn't hit me. I don't.
Relatable. Hashtag relatable. Yep.
I'm not feeling that one.
Okay, look. All right, so let me break it down for you, Timothy. Okay, so
not feeling it, bro.
This just means that when you're young, you're stupid, right? And I think you can agree with that. And the way that I'm going to tie this into
and poor, apparently, it doesn't say we were severely under-intelligentized.
Yeah, but the underfunded thing is like it's a play on my brain is my writing staff, right? And they were poor and underfunded.
Dude, you are a much either dumber or smarter millennial than I am.
I am
I am one of the two.
You're Gen Y. Don't even try to hop in my bandwagon here.
I was an 82 according to the chart I just looked at.
Listen, okay, Linda. Basically, this all I'm saying is that this says don't cancel people for tweets when they're 17. Boom, done.
Hey, I'll jump on board for that. I'll say don't cancel people for tweets they made more than a month ago.
Or how about ask the person whether they still believe what they said or whether they were joking.
Hey, let's piggyback on that and just say let's have conversations about tweets that you find offensive to find out.
Start a podcast with 3 people on it, one from the left,
or 2 sometimes,
one from the right,
or 2 sometimes,
right? Depending on the situation, it's got to be flexible.
Yeah. So I saw this video today. Another Flip Kick 360. I saw this video today, and I don't know if it's real. It's obviously cut in multiple places, and I don't know how cut and how real it is. But there's no way this can be real, and it didn't come up for now. And even that it did come up now, it's not like everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna play this, and then tell me if like this is one of those.
What's the title of this before you play it? Biden fed up with gays. Oh God, saying, quote, "The world is going to Hades in a handbasket. Comedian Chauvin is shocked." Okay, let's hear it.
Yeah. So I don't know who this guy is, but
talk about a constitutional amendment to ban gay marriage.
Think about this. The world's going to Hades in a handbasket, and we're going to debate the next 3 weeks, I'm told, gay marriage and God only knows what else. I can't believe the American people can't see through this. We already have a law, the Defense of Marriage Act, where we've all voted, not where I voted and others said, look, marriage is between a man and a woman, and states must respect that.
My feelings about this are constantly
like,
what a dinosaur. Oh my God.
How is that? There must be some massive editing that happened there or something.
What are you saying? That's a deep fake?
No, like taking things out of context.
Ads? And that's like how?
No,
how?
Like taking things out of context. Like he had this discussion, but he wasn't.
Oh.
He actually wasn't against the
right.
marriage
okay,
proposal.
So you clip him saying. Yeah.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Okay. All right. So you splice together different portions of the conversation.
They must have, because how How else did that not come out
I-
during the campaign?
I'm 70% certain that's real, right? And
How did it not come out during the campaign? How was that?
you know,
not an
because
issue?
I bet that so every politician that's in office right now cannot throw stones on that issue because they have been in office since before, Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed, So I'm sure there's a few of them that can throw stones, but for the most part, being a national level politician or even a state level politician used to mean that you were in favor of traditional marriage. So my point is that I probably even Donald Trump can't cut an ad like that without the other one coming back at him like, well, you said the same thing in 1980, whatever.
Yeah, but so that means younger politicians can come out and just throw that shit up, right? Like you would
And
imagine that you'd see it from a
sure.
younger politician out there.
But here's the thing, Tim.
Not seen that at all.
If you showed that to AOC, she would put it in. She would clip it. She would go with it because she doesn't give a fuck. Whatever you think about her, she speaks her she speaks her mind. She'll go
Yeah.
after Joe Biden.
Yeah, I believe she would.
Yes, I can
mean,
throw some respect on that.
That's one of the things that Chris likes about her, right? Is that
Yes, I know.
she's a little bit feisty.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm gonna have to dig into that one. I saw it, maybe a couple hours before the podcast started, so I didn't have a chance to dig and find.
It's also getting shitty with deep fakes and selective
Yeah.
editing. It has been a cancer for a while. So
And that's kind of the conversation I wanted to get into was how much of a problem do you think that's going to be going forward? I mean, I think most of what we've seen get really big lately over the past couple of years hasn't been deep faked or completely altered out of context to a degree where it was completely fake, right?
yeah, and you still having a hard time getting over the uncanny valley. I mean, take the Mandalorian for instance, like the final episode with Luke Skywalker, where they tried doing a deep fake with Luke, and they tried doing the voice at this. I think maybe the issue is they tried doing the voice at the same time, so the whole thing was just jarring. But
they actually did a terrible job too. Like
what's that?
They didn't. You would imagine Disney and Lucasfilm's combination would have the resources and put the effort into doing that well.
Right, but my takeaway from it, Tim, is that the technology is probably not there. Like if Disney can't do it, it's probably still very hard to do correctly.
Yeah, I mean it's not there. You're right, but it's there better than that. There's a YouTube channel, and I forget the name of it, that is run by some graphic artists, and they used to do video editing for films and things, I believe, but I don't know, they may still do it, but now they do this YouTube channel, and they've done some deep fakes in the past. They did a really cool one of Tom Cruise, and I mean it's pretty convincing. You can tell, but it's close. They did that scene. They redid it in like a couple days with an actor that looks way less as convincing.
Now hold on,
it looked better.
Did they take the raw? Wait, did they take the Mandalorian footage with the deep fake and then put a deep fake on top of the deep fake's face?
No, they refilmed the scenes themselves.
Oh, okay.
So they created in CG all of the Mandalorian backgrounds, like the tunnel that he walks through when he fights, whatever.
Spoilers, by the way. God, man, spoilers. Sorry, everybody. I just thought I could spoil it because I'd finally seen it.
So anyway, but yeah, it can be done. I did see somewhere that guy is going to be playing Luke Skywalker potentially in some upcoming Star Wars stuff.
Okay, when you say that guy, what guy?
The guy that they used as the deepfake base. Hold on.
They didn't just use Luke's face as deepfake face?
No, they used.
Are you talking about the actor who was standing under the deepfake?
Yes.
Okay.
Let me find the picture real quick. There.
Maybe. Oh yeah.
That's
the
guy that they deepfaked on. Sebastian Stan, I think, is the guy's name. I don't know who Lucky is.
I think he's. Is he not in the Marvel universe as Winter Soldier? Or am I just I could be
I don't know.
crazy there.
I don't know. But anyway,
Yeah.
so I read
I don't
somewhere
know.
that,
Look, Tim, I don't know how much of a problem that's going to be. One
I don't
would
think
think
it is
that,
a problem.
No, I mean I don't mean bad deepfakes. I mean the deepfakes that eventually start making everybody
Oh,
question.
gotcha.
Yeah,
Back on
I mean,
topic.
yeah,
gotcha.
the topic. Yeah. I
Back on
think.
topic.
Look, it can be a problem, but the thing is that when it becomes more of a problem, a solution that we're not thinking about right now will probably present itself, right? And that sounds uncharacteristically optimistic of me, but it's kind of like the free market. Like there is a free market of ideas out there, generally speaking, and people are pretty smart and they'll find ways around it. And one of those things, like stuff that you can think about right away, is that every deepfake usually has a source, right? And if you can, if you're the person who holds the source, like in this still happens all the time. Like people doctor tweets. Like you don't even have to think about deep fakes. You have like doctored tweets or tweets, people change things or just change static images all the time. And people who have the originals always post them and be like, "What are you doing? Like this is what it actually is." And those, like, if the first one went viral, the one that was wrong, that made everybody hate the person, it goes even more viral when the correction comes out and it's like a smackdown. It's like, what are you doing?
That only works when the original was something that was taken from like the web or whatever. And so if you think of it in the case, let's say let's look at the Mandalorian, right?
Yep.
So they generated this scene, right, for the
Yeah.
movie. And then they throw Luke Skywalker in. And if technology was to the point where you can't tell that that's not actually a time traveled
so,
Mark Hamill.
For instance, somebody like wholesale out of cloth, like I know this is super crazy, but just like they from scratch, they manufacture a scene of Joe Biden sniffing some children, right? So I know that wouldn't happen in real life, but you do that. There's no footage to corroborate that he didn't actually do that, and then you just put it out there. So sure, that can be a problem, I guess.
Yeah, I think
I don't know how to like. And then okay. So number one,
deepfakes are going to be.
Yeah,
you're going to be able to look at that for a long time going forward. I mean, even once they become indiscernible to the human eye, which I think we're years away from.
Yeah,
they're not going to be indiscernible to software for a long, if ever, for a long time. Right. And so, I think there will have to be reputable sources. PolitiFact, whatever, some version of that, right? That looks at all the videos and other media coming out and says, yeah, this is legit, this is real, this is not. But I don't know. It's going to, I mean, Facebook, political warriors, they don't care. They just, whatever they see is fucking real, I think it could be an issue regardless of people coming out and saying this is real or fake, because right now we're seeing with just absolute nonsense being spewed out, people saying, yep, this is real, just because they saw it,
Right. And it's part of so like, if you were to take the trends of information siloing, and if you were to take those trends and sort of continue maximizing them till we actually just nobody ever talks to the other side and we have absolutely no idea, what the opposition sees or is thinking, and you all have your own information, then that paired with deepfakes makes it worse, right? So if you don't have people who are not willing to check their bias, right? So if we're all in our own silo with people who think exactly like us, and all of us want this one thing to believe to be true, we're less likely to check it. And then in the future, when there's the information silos are more rigid and less people are cross-pollinating ideas, they're not even going to see the counterfactual, like hey, that's fake. We have the original right here, or that's fake. Here's why we know that. And people just won't hear that. So I think that, and combined with information silo, sure, there could be some problems in the future, I think.
You're up, I think.
Yeah, so I'm just going to talk about this one. I don't actually have a visual for it. I mean, I suppose I could look one up.
No visual.
But, so, Crowder's back on YouTube, and as Reddit pointed out, he's trying to get banned again. So he did a segment where, let's look at this. I'll pull this up here. This is going to play a YouTube video. I'm not going to do that. he did a segment in this morning's show where he tested out the knee on the neck theory. Where
I've been thinking about doing that.
I know, I've been thinking about it too, but the thing is like I'm a kind of like a small guy. I probably would just like my neck would just snap. That's it, you know. It wouldn't be an asphyxiation thing. But Steven Crowder did the thing that a lot of people thought about doing, but he actually did it. So he had he matched the weights of the people as close as he could. So he took the place of George Floyd. He's at about like 240 pounds. I think he might be about the same height as George Floyd. And then he had one of his interns or maybe a producer or something kneel on his neck for about 9 minutes. And so, you know, there's that now. It was interesting. It was very interesting. Look, I'm a fan of the guy. I would say it did not look to me like, I wonder if I can get you some images, because it did not look to me like, yeah. I'm just pulling up some of the images here. It did not look to me like he was quite as knee down into the neck as
it doesn't look like it to me either. And it looks like that guy's knee's actually on his back too.
Yeah, his knee's on his back too. Now the thing is
and
that
Chauvin's other knee, I believe, was on the pavement.
Right, or at least up in the air. So all of the, unless this hand was up braced on the car, which I don't think it was. I think it was in his pocket.
It was on his. I think Chauvin was holding the cuffs.
Right. So, I mean, he shifted around a whole bunch. There were times where he was actually like straight up, but he still usually had this knee on his back. So it's like, we have, there's a side-by-side comparison.
Yeah.
Right
So you can look at his back. I'm sitting here pointing to my screen like you can fucking see my finger here. But
yeah, this is probably the most generous cut. I bet this was done by a fan.
Look at his back. You look at his second leg. Chauvin's second leg. You can tell that it's back significantly further.
You know, they were actually talking about that in court today. They were talking about the lawyer was trying to get one of the investigators to say, like, when Chauvin moved his right knee, you could clearly see that there was pressure on the back.
Yeah, there's been a few times where the defense attorney. So I've been watching as much of it as I have time to, which isn't a lot,
which is not too much.
So I've been doing a mix of watching cuts where people have said, "Hey, this is the important stuff to see," and then also just listening to the whole thing live, which is very interesting to see how the process is going through. Because I've never really sat and watched a murder trial all the way through. But yeah, the defense is trying to say his knee was on his shoulder, his back. But
Yep.
the scene he's using for that is one time stamp, which is when the EMTs have already arrived and are getting ready to tap Chauvin off of him to pick him up and put him onto the stretcher. So
Yep.
Some of the people have said, yeah, it looks like it could have been on the back. It's hard to tell from this angle. And some of them have said, yep, looks like it's on the back there. And others have said, no, I still think it's on the neck.
Right. And it was mostly like right towards the end when the ambulance got there. So most of the time it was on the neck or the base of the neck.
Yeah. So what was it the other 9 minutes and 20 seconds, right? Like
and it's the question is also, it's like, you think about every angle of this. It's like, okay, did he have as much weight as it looked like? Because we don't have any reason to believe that it wasn't, but that's also not proof that there was that much weight there. It's like, there's so many questions to ask about this. And it's like,
yeah. And another one is, like the defense said, ask the question to one of the trainers, can you feel for a pulse on the carotid artery if the knee is on the carotid artery? And the answer was no, but the knee wasn't on the carotid artery. That hasn't been the contention, right?
Right.
It's almost misleading the jury a little bit with that question, it feels like.
But yeah, I mean, if you watch the courtroom, I mean, misleading happens both ways.
100%.
You remember, so like a little bit earlier on, there was the firefighter was a little combative, and she kept.
I heard about it. I didn't see her testimony.
Right. I told you about that, so we're taking my word for it. But
I believe you. I heard that.
Yeah. So she kept she was very clearly opinionated in the case, and she was opinionated against Chauvin, which, it's fine. Like, she's not required to be impartial. But the defense would keep leading her, or keep asking leading questions, which is what lawyers on both sides of every case do, right? That is, you're supposed to do that, right? And they would keep doing that, and she would be like, well, yes, but, and then she would like try to say the thing that she knew that the lawyer was skirting around, and then like the lawyer would be like, okay, but I'm not asking you that. And then like the judge stepped in several times. He's like, please just answer the questions that are being asked of you. And like eventually he had to like fully stop and like get her to turn to him and say like, listen, it's the attorney's prerogative to do leading questions. Okay, you just answer the question. And she's like, okay.
Yeah, no, but I can see it from her perspective too, how frustrating it would be.
Yep. Yep.
It almost feels like someone's putting.
And I'm sure it felt to her like she was like being dirtied or like led to help a murderer get off, and it just wasn't sitting right with her.
For me, it would be that it would feel like somebody's putting words in my mouth. Right, somebody's making me say something that I don't actually mean to say by the way they're asking a question. And so if I was in her shoes, I would be doing probably the same thing, not out of a sense of I want to make somebody believe what I believe. I just want to be clear what I'm saying. Right.
And there's a fine line between, as if you watch a lot of this footage, you'll find that there is a fine line between clarifying your answer and then answering a question that wasn't asked. Right.
Yeah.
That's when the judge would like step in and stop her.
Yeah. Even the police chief did it a few times, clarify his answer.
Yeah. And that was the difference. The police chief was he was doing good clarifications. He wasn't doing, he wasn't answering a question that wasn't asked. So,
yeah.
And look, I bear no ill will whatsoever. So I'm obviously a little bit on the other side of the issue than the firefighter, but I know that she's clearly passionate. She believes what she does. I have nothing against her.
So last week we talked about this. If we just want to stay on this one for a minute, we talked about Chauvin's trial a bit. And at the time I was, generally 50-50 on what I thought was going to happen in the trial.
Yep.
If he was going to be convicted or acquitted of the charges. And after watching, another couple days, weeks worth of interviews and some of the big ones being the police chief, probably the biggest at this point for me.
And the trainer.
The trainers were big too, but they weren't as big to me as the police chief. And then the medical examiner that they had, the one that pronounced him dead, that he wasn't as impactly to me. I guess he didn't say anything that I didn't already know.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
He was pronounced dead due to heart failure or his heart not beating.
Right, and it's it's not his job per se to he's not the coroner, right? He doesn't do the autopsy, basically is what I'm saying.
Yeah, so. Yeah. And his statement was even wide open. It was like, I forget the exact questions and whatever, but it was like, was lack of oxygen, one of the main potential causes?
Right. Asphyxiation.
Yes. He's like, yes, it was one of the main potential causes we thought could be the cause based on the information we had at the time, which leaves like 1,000 doors open.
Right, exactly. Right. He was speaking more in his ability to rule things out as the cause. Was to definitively saying this is what happened. Right. And then
I think he did a good job. It's not his job to come out and say. Right.
Correct. Yep.
So.
And even on the asphyxiation thing, the thing that the defense lawyer got in was like, okay, yes, asphyxiation is on the table. It looks like that could have been a cause. Is it possible to have those symptoms of asphyxiation? Can you have low blood, oxygen from fentanyl use? And the answer was also yes, it's possible. So it's like, I felt like he was a really good witness. It wasn't wide open. It leaned probably a little bit more towards the prosecution than the defense, but still,
as it should at this point. These are the prosecution's witnesses.
Correct.
So it's a pretty big misstep, I think, if the prosecution puts a witness up there.
Right. That doesn't really
that ends up leaning the other way. Yeah. And that he might have actually been one of the worst witnesses so far for the prosecution.
I hear there was one, so I didn't see. It was either today or yesterday. In the portions I didn't see, there was apparently a witness that the defense said, "Actually, can we get this guy? We're gonna call this guy when it's our turn. We want this guy back." And I think it was probably one of the trainers, and he was probably saying something about. He was probably a little bit. I'm guessing here. He was probably a little bit more friendly to the knee on the neck and answered some of their questions a little bit more favorably.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, they should be able to bring him
Oh,
back.
actually, I do know. It just one of the trainers said that he had, in fact, held somebody in a restrained position until medical arrived without letting up. Like he almost did the exact same thing himself to George Floyd. I'm sure that there was probably some substantial differences in circumstance, but I mean that's the defense wants him back up there. And if I was that guy, I'd be scared. Like, are they going to ask me to admit the same exact thing that this guy's on trial for manslaughter and murder in the second degree? Whatever.
Yeah, I think for me a big changing point in not my opinion on what happened. I mean, I don't think that really has changed a whole lot so far in watching this trial. My opinion isn't rock solid, but I feel like it's going to take somebody giving me some information that I don't already know to change my view of what I saw. Yeah. But as far as what I think will happen, the outcome of the trial, and again, you got to take into account all of the witnesses so far have been called by the prosecution, so it should your view should be shifting some towards the side of Chauvin might be getting convicted for something here. But mine shifted pretty heavily. I'm probably like 80 or 90% at this point that he's going to end up getting convicted for, one of the charges. My guess is possibly actually murder too, which I was not thinking was really on the table before. But, but based on the police chief's testimony, which probably hit me the most, basically saying that it was excessive use of force, which then becomes a crime, right? Excessive use of force is a crime, and then in the act of committing a crime, somebody died. That's murder too. So
I was thinking about whether I would or how I would address the police chief's testimony. I'm gonna say what I think, right? We'll just throw it out there. To me, as somebody who's been in the military and had sort of military-like structures, and the police force kind of mirrors that sort of military hierarchy. It's very rigid. The thing is that the most not the most competent people, but the most political people end up making it to the top of the chain.
Police chief's 100% that.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not saying
not just him. I mean, in general, right? That's their job.
That's 100%. Yes. So I'm just going to clarify. I'm not saying that if I don't know this guy other than this testimony, and I'm not trying to smear or lambast him for something that maybe he isn't guilty of, but he came off to me as a politician who's not thinking about George or Derek Chauvin. He's thinking about the city that might erupt into riots if this doesn't go down correctly. I think he's a bit of a slimy politician, right? Frankly, that's kind of how he came off.
Yeah, so I'll agree with you on the front that I think police chiefs generally are more political, and that's when you get to that level, that's the job. He's that's who he's interacting with. That's what he's doing. He's dealing with media and all that. That's his face that he's got to put out. He didn't come across to me as slimy or anything, though. He came across to me as pretty intelligent, pretty put together. Yeah. And that he answered.
He could be both of those things.
Well, I felt agreed. Yeah, I agree. Those aren't
mutually exclusive. Yeah.
Mutually exclusive. Yeah, but he came across to me as answering really fairly. And any question he was given, he answered what I felt was a pretty fair, logical answer based on the policies and things that were displayed and he was asked about.
Yep.
There was a few times where he said things that I thought were supportive of Chauvin. But when push came to shove and it was, the question of, do you think the action he took was excessive or the force he took was excessive?
Did the knee on the neck violate policy? Right.
Right. And he said
yes.
He said yes, right?
Yeah.
And so up until those points where he actually gave his opinion on stuff, he really answered well, I thought, compared to what the policy was, and seemed to know the policy, current and previous, pretty well. Um, and even inside of saying, yeah, I think he violated policy. It based on what the policies were they showed, I generally agreed. So, yeah, he didn't come
Right.
across as slimy to me, but I get the idea that you would hope your police chief had your back because you were a police officer.
Yeah, and that's when it
Kinda
gets
thing,
really hairy.
so,
I knew somebody in the military who was vehemently anti-cop, and geez, I hope you're not watching this now. But he was like, this was way before I was political. I knew nothing about anything. I wasn't left or right. I was sort of maybe default right just because I knew that I grew up in a Republican household, but I knew nothing about politics. But anyways, this guy, I remember he was the first one to kind of challenge me on corrupt cops or cops taking their power too far, or the idea that the police might not be your friend. And I constantly think about that, and I remember one of the arguments that we had was I was saying something that I intuitively felt, and this is something that I still intuitively feel, but I know it's kind of at odds with the Western liberalism or the strict the legal system that we have, which is that police serve the communities. Like, you can say they take a salary all you want, and that is true, but they do this unique thing where their job is to take risks to their bodily harm, like risks to their body almost every single day, right? Especially if you're in the inner city. And it's like,
but that's not unique.
okay, so but there are risks in other jobs, right? But usually those risks are mitigated to the degree that they can by safety regulations, and you can mitigate out a vast majority of a lot of daily risks in those other jobs.
I wonder, out of curiosity here, I don't know, but I wonder, as far as injury, just injury goes,
yeah,
what percentage of cops are injured compared to NFL players?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Or I would say I would not even go something superfluous like NFL players who get.
Yeah, it is very superfluous.
Well, like coal miners,
but coal miners or
some whatever profession with a high
construction
injury
workers
rate.
is a considerably dangerous.
Yeah, I wonder. And it's okay. So, but it's also not that, right? So, again, I'm really diving into this where I was just going to try to lay it out here, but like there would be a difference between,
not on this channel. You're not,
exactly.
My friend.
We don't dive on this channel. What are you talking about? Okay, so there's a difference even between workplace injuries and sort of interpersonal violence that policing confronts you with, right? So, like, it would be tough to get, you would maybe get a small amount of PTSD from having your arm ripped off, by a jackhammer or something like that. But like PTSD in police is almost as common as it is in, Iraqi war veterans. It's like the job is it just beats on you, and the pay isn't even really that good, right?
Yeah.
And again, there's the risk to your life, and that risk to your life is the risk to your family, right? And so what I'm saying with all of this, right, and we can keep this general. I know we could keep digging in on the specifics of what they get paid, or they have the benefits of having power over people. Like, I understand the totality of all those arguments, but it's like at the end of the day, they still take a risk, and then the question becomes, what is that risk worth when they mess up, right? And I'm not even trying to say that George Floyd either did or did not intentionally do this. I'm kind of trying to have a general conversation, like what if they mess up and somebody dies, let's say negligently, and it is proved to be a negligent death where they should have been doing something, which is kind of actually what this looks like to me, where they should have been doing something. They should have been checking pulses and administering CPR, and they didn't do it. They're at the end of a 19-year career. They're all messed up on the inside of their head from this long traumatic life. They can't feel in these three fingers because the nerves got shot out one year. Like all this stuff. Like what is that worth? And how do you balance that with the need for justice, right? Because you have cops that do go bad, right? And I know, for example, my friend back in the Navy, he would have very little, because I think I would assume he had bad run-ins with his cops. He probably. A lot, probably, it sounded like to me, and it's like he would probably just say, it doesn't matter, the law is the law. If they break the law, they break the law. And it's clean and neat to me, and I'm very sympathetic to that. But I have the nagging feelings, like I feel like maybe there should be some advantage, and I don't know. I'm not even saying that. I don't know. Just
Yeah,
articulating.
I don't think there should be. And I guess a couple real quick, thought triggers for that. One is kind of free market, right? Like, you know what you're getting yourself into when you get into it, and this is the responsibility you put on yourself. And if you can't handle it and you can't deal with it, then you're still responsible for your own actions. You can't, you can't blame it on that. That's more of a trigger for you, just because I know very free market and whatever mentality. But I generally agree with a lot of your points, right? And we've had this conversation a few times, probably several on stream, but I can't recall because we've had it so many times. But cops, in my opinion, are underpaid and overstressed. There's a lot of responsibility put on their shoulders. They have a lot of power, and they don't make that much. And I've told you, like, before, that I feel like the best people, the best and the brightest, don't go into being cops generally. You have some amazing people that are police officers because they have some moral feeling of obligation that they want to go do this. But a lot of times it's not that way, right? And I'm an example of that. When I was in high school, as I mentioned to you before, I was thinking about being a cop. I really thought it would be a great career path. And I spent a good year or so in my high school days riding around with the cops of my hometown. There's a program for younger people to join and be part of. It's kind of like Boy Scouts with cops, if you think, or whatever.
Yeah, it's like ride along or whatever.
Yeah, I think it was called the Explorer program. So we did ride-alongs, we did trainings, we had our own little weekend long camps, basically, where you do trainings and shooting simulations, and you take exams and tests. And I performed amazingly on all of these things. And at the end of the day, I decided being a cop wasn't worth it. Yeah. It's not that I didn't want to do it. It's not that I thought that I wouldn't do a good job or that I would bring a lot of value to society. It was, they don't make enough for the risk that I would take, not only to myself, to physical harm and stuff, but also to my life. One of the things I noticed, clear as day, all of the younger cops, the guys that have been there, 5 years or less, maybe 10 years or less, awesome guys, right? They'd pull somebody over, they'd give them the benefit of the doubt, they'd give them a warning, whatever, right? Like, they were super friendly with people. All the older guys were just like, fuck everyone, right? They pulled you over, you're getting a goddamn ticket. Man. Right? Everyone's an asshole. Everyone's a piece of shit. And one of the leaders of the Explorer program, I sat down and talked to him, and he's like, look, he's like, you're in this long enough. You've gone through 3 divorces because this stuff comes home with you. You can't deal with it. You see the assholes every day. He's like, you just generally, the only people that you can see as real people anymore are friends and family, and that's it. And I was like, fuck all that. So, but that's what it does to you. I don't envy cops for having to go through all that, but I think, so I think we need to train better. I think we need to pay more.
Yeah.
To get better people in these positions that can, maybe be a little more resilient against the crap that they have to deal with. Maybe give them more breaks, more vacations, whatever need be.
Yeah, I know there's been pushes. There's been pushes for more mental health and stuff like that. And I gotta say, it's probably, it just feels to me. Maybe this is just because we live in the world of the internet where you just see the worst things anyways, but it just kind of feels to me like all of that stuff is just like a drop in the pond. And it's like, they still have PTSD. They just now talk to somebody about it. It's like they still go home and beat their wife because they, have, they've seen the worst of humanity for 20 years straight. It's like, again, I'm not excusing it, right? And I am a person who very often on this show and in my life says, your circumstances shouldn't define you. So, I mean, there's that as well, like you're still responsible to be a human being. But I mean, how much is too much, right? And I just don't know. A lot of it's speculation because we're not in their shoes.
Yeah. So, I mean, if it's too much, though, they need to be removed. So we at least need to have something in place. And I know we do a lot of times, like psychological evaluations and things that can generally pull people out if they get too far. But, it's not easy. And I don't envy the situation they're in. But at the same time, because of the power they have, there can't be any forgiveness, in my opinion. And the reason being, like, it's as simple as, Like if you're walking, and I know this from personal experience.
Yep.
Not to get too deep into it, so I'll leave that at that. But if you're walking down the street and let's say for whatever reason, I mean, it could be any reason, the cop just doesn't like the way you look, he doesn't like something, he comes up, he can just arrest you right there and say, yeah, I'm charging you with disorderly conduct, you did X, Y, and Z, whatever it is, right?
Yep.
You're yelling at this person, I saw you pull your pants down and flash,
And then it's on
which
you
would
to
be a
fight
different charge. You go to court, if you don't have proof that you didn't do it, and it's your word against the cop, you are getting convicted.
Yep.
No question asked. A cop has the power to ruin your life on his word. There's no question there. I've had that happen to me twice. Well, not as in that bad of such circumstances, right? Like luckily, the things that happened were nowhere near that bad. But I've had it twice where I didn't do what I was being accused of, and it didn't matter. I actually had witnesses in one case that came to court and testified for me saying that I didn't do these things and it didn't matter. Right?
Yeah.
So cops have an immense amount of power, an immense amount of responsibility. And because of that, I think they have to be held to a high level of accountability for their actions.
Hey man, good solution for that is body cams.
Love it. Yes. 100%.
Yep.
And
I don't know of anybody who's against that.
And don't hold them accountable for shit that's not their fault.
Yeah.
Right? It needs to be fair. Yeah. Like, they're not accountable for things that are outside of their control.
Yeah. Yes. All right.
So let's change. That was you, my friend. Let's change topics to voter issues in Georgia.
Okay.
Hence my picture here. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye, MLB. It's just the All-Star game, right? It's not.
Yeah, it's just the All-Star game. The All-Star game, so I live in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone else knew that. I don't know if I've said that on the podcast before. But anyway, I live in Cincinnati. The All-Star game was here some years back, and I volunteered at it and helped and, was at the game. And it was amazing. It was a lot of business, and it was a big deal. So Atlanta losing the All-Star game is not something for the city to sneeze at, for sure.
Yeah.
And now it's off to Denver, so need a ride.
So just to recap, right? To recap a little bit. So, the word in the left-wing circles, which means basically all of the mainstream media except for Fox and the New York Post, is that and the president believes this too, is that the new voter laws in Georgia that require ID, that limit ballot boxes to certain times in certain locations, that prevent you from giving gifts to people standing in lines, which includes food and water, voting lines, and I think there's they might expand early voting, whatever. This whole bill is being painted as Jim Crow 2.0, and so. And it's just, to me, starkly untrue. Maybe I'm missing something, but it seems to be starkly untrue. And in response, Coca-Cola, or Woca-Cola as they're now termed.
Which is an amazing moniker.
Is it not? It's great.
Woca-Cola. Dude, all right. So we need to make a pact right now. Next time we go, I don't know, to McDonald's, wherever, we're going to order a large Woca-Cola. It's all you can't call it Coca-Cola anymore.
Punching it in too, and we're gonna be like snickering in the car, and it's like, and then punching it in, like, this is the 13th time I've heard that tonight, sir. Can you just, what else?
Yeah, let's get that Woca-Cola. Gotta get. Can I? I don't want a large Woca-Cola. Super Trooper.
Cherry Woca-Cola.
Bad reference.
Okay, so they came out.
I did a fair amount of research on this bill.
Okay, let me just say what they did.
Notes on 15 different points within the bill. So if you want, we can crush out some talking points.
Yes, let's do it. Let me just say what Coca-Cola did and the MLB. So in response to the new Jim Crow taking place in Georgia, Coca-Cola came out. The CEO was basically put out a message saying, we abhor this. We don't like voter suppression. We think that Republicans racist, blah, blah, blah. And then the MLB came out and said, we're not having the All-Stars game in Georgia because voter suppression is evil and it's Jim Crow 2.0, blah, blah, blah.
There's another big company, too, that just
Delta.
came out and spoke again. Yeah, Delta. That's what it
Delta
was.
Airlines. Yep.
Yeah.
So, all right.
But Delta and Coke, to be clear, Delta and Coke, they've only come out and expressed their displeasure with the bill. From my understanding, they have yet to do anything from a, removing business perspective, moving headquarters, like saying they're going to do those types of things. Right? They're just talking.
Yeah, the GOP in Georgia threatened to remove Delta's tax grants. Yeah,
I saw that.
Think about that real quick. I'm very
okay. I'm going to tell you, as being a Cincinnati person, if you try and do something like that to Delta, they just gonna fucking leave. They did that in Cincinnati. Cincinnati was one of their major hubs. It was like their Midwestern hub. It was amazing. I could fly anywhere direct. It was great. And the airport here was trying to raise rates or something like that. Long story short, and Delta was like, "Look, you do that, and we're going to leave." And the airport was like, "Dude, you're not going to move your entire freaking hub because of a little bit of an increase in rates." Detroit is now their Midwestern hub, and Cincinnati Airport is hollow.
So get smacked here, and then they'll.
So maybe Cincinnati's back. Bring Atlanta back up here, boys. Hey, Cincinnati is open. Come on up. We still got the terminals for you. We saved them. We're still ready. So, yeah. So I went through and looked at. I didn't read the whole bill. I didn't have it in me to read all that legal speak. But I looked at a lot of different articles, and I found a few that did a good job of breaking down all the different.
I hear CNN actually did a passable job at it.
And so I have 15 bullet points of different voting, related things that this bill changes or does.
All right.
Most of them are minor, but all right. So first one is it shortens the amount of time that you have to request an absentee ballot.
Yep.
So it used to be 180 days prior to the election, you could submit your request for an absentee ballot. Hey, I want to vote absentee. You send in this little form, and then they send you out the ballot.
Yep.
Now it's 78 days.
Yep.
They didn't change the other end of that, which you can't request one more than 11 days prior, right? That stayed the same. So they only shortened the days before. And I know that's gotten a lot of feedback and a lot of frustration from, the media and stuff. I don't know how big of an impact that is. Really, like, if I'm going to be requesting an absentee ballot and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I can't do it 6 months in advance now. I can only do it, 2 months or 3 months.
Right.
How big of an impact that is. But the other side of that is why? Like, why can't I just say I always want a fucking absentee ballot? Right? Like, why is it an issue that it's 6
I'm not
months
sure.
versus 3 months?
It's probably a security thing. It's just probably that it's less secure, and I'm not sure why. I don't know.
Yeah,
now the question,
that's my contention. Really, isn't like, I don't think it's that major of an issue.
Well, some of these will come down to that. It's like, why do it, right? And then you can always think about the meta argument.
The meta argument is, hey, the less time, the more likely it is somebody forgets, misses the time, whatever.
And mail-in voting favors Democrats, right? So that's really the reason why we're fighting. And then there's like sort of like on the ground rationalizations, and that's kind of the same. So
I'm trying to give the benefit of the doubt and understand on some of these, like, what's the rationalization. On this one, I just can't see it.
Right, so I'm not so clear on that one, but I will assume that if you compare that to the rest of the country, it's probably about average, right? It's probably
maybe, and I haven't done that, but even if that's the case, it doesn't make sense. Like, why change something to make it more difficult to vote, or more likely you're going to fuck up and miss your opportunity to vote unless there's a good reason to do so, right?
Right.
And I get the idea of security, but it's not. Yeah. I don't think it has. I mean, I can't see what security would have to play with it. It could be that, hey, we don't want you to vote absentee. We want you to show up in person. So
right.
We don't want you to just do it.
78 days. So, like you were saying, 78 days. Yeah. There's always, with these topics, there's always like a subtle hidden thing that you're not thinking about, and you almost have to specifically research like you have to type in a loaded question into Google to try to get the partisan answer. Like for just for example, on a slightly different thing, on same day voter registration, I was like, well, what's wrong with that? Why can't we have that, right? And it's a Republican thing not to have that. So it's like, okay, what's up with these dirty GOP? What's going on with this? And it's like, oh, there is actually a rational answer. It's that on voting day, like administratively, they don't know how many ballots to have, right? It's almost impossible to do a whole bunch of predicting that they kind of need to do and is good to have. If
enough ballots for every single person.
Correct, right? So
done.
So there's
more
always
expensive, but shit, everybody should be able to vote even if they show up the day of.
Yeah, but then you're spending too much money for no reason.
Not for no reason.
Well, that's basically no reason.
No, and also I don't know how hard it is to just have a fucking printer.
Was that one of the points, by the way? Did they address same day?
No, that wasn't.
Okay,
that wasn't
yeah.
one.
So that was just kind of an example where there's like there is something that you're not considering on some of these.
So that to me, that's a minor issue that is almost an excuse for that point. Now that isn't one of the points in this, but so for this one, for that particular point, I don't think it's a big issue. I wouldn't be making huge deals out of it necessarily, for specifically that. But I also think that it is being done purely from a political standpoint. It doesn't really make sense as to why you would be doing that, in my opinion, outside of just trying to limit absentee ballots. Now, limiting absentee ballots may be from a, if we want to give the benefit of the doubt and say it's not a political thing, it's not like, hey, we don't want Democrats to vote. It could just be, I have the conservative view of you should show up and vote in person, dude. Absentee ballots should only be for people that really need it because they're out of town or they're sick or they can't make it. And by shortening the time, you reduce the amount of people that are just like, hey, I want an absentee ballot because I don't feel like going to the polls, right?
Well, you're also going to reduce the amount of time where you have this ballot that you could just fill out before crucial information in the presidential campaign comes to light. Like because campaigns are ongoing.
So
right?
That's making the assumption that people actually know what they're voting for.
Yeah, I hear that, but like let's say for example that like the son of the president were to like have his cleaning lady drop his laptop off at a laptop repair shop, right? Let's say that he also forgets to pick it up. And then the guy opens up the laptop and then finds out it's his and then, leaks it to the press and it becomes a nationwide story. And then Donald Trump gets another 4 years.
No. So you're misunderstanding. This is a request for an absentee ballot. This isn't the actual absentee ballot.
Well, that was my next question, actually. Does the ballot come when you request it?
No.
Okay, then I have no idea. Well,
no, it's really just saying it's the ability to tell the voter group, the committee for whatever voting, that I want to vote absentee. Here's my official request for an absentee ballot. That's all it is. So that when you're sending out absentee ballots, I want one.
Yeah, well, we restrict that in general. So, and then we should probably move on because we have like 15 points to get to. But we restrict absentee voting in general, anyways, right? It's supposed to be.
Some states do.
Right, generally speaking, and it has been before. Like you generally do want people to come in, right? And apparently, we can't come up with the exact reasons why, but it's generally it's probably more secure. It's
because that's the way we've always done it, son.
There you go.
And that's the way we need to keep doing it.
I don't know. All right.
Yeah.
So, all right. Cool.
All right. So anyway, that particular point, kind of BS. The next one is absentee ID. So one of the big things that I saw originally was, you have to have an ID to vote now, blah, 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 blah. That's actually not what happened. It's only on absentee ballots that voter ID issues changed. So in Georgia, you've always had to have an ID, a photo ID, voting in person. Yep, voting in person. And for absentee ballots, it only took a signature. So there was a discrepancy there, in my opinion, on level of security, if you want to put it that way, between an absentee ballot and voting at the polls to some degree, right? I think for an absentee ballot, you had to have received that at the residence on file, requested a ballot, and then received it, filled it out, and sent it in. So it leaves open the room for somebody moved in that time and things, but
Yeah.
And we're able to know what your signature kind of looked like to forge it enough to get it to match. But I think that's less secure, I would say, generally,
Right.
a little bit than actual photo ID at the time of voting.
All right.
Um,
Okay.
So
So let me give you the social justice warrior argument on this, and that is that voting ID laws in general are racist and that it suppresses the black vote. And the reason
Yeah.
is, if these statistics are to be believed, that 25% of black people don't have IDs and 10% of white people don't have IDs, right? And so and again, this actually speaks to there's
let
a
me ask you
narrative,
something.
and then there's the meta narrative, and the meta narrative is it's just plain and simple that you will likely depress.
You don't have to have an ID. So again, this only affects absentee ballots.
Yep.
You always had to have an ID, a photo ID. You could use a voter registration card.
That's besides the point. That's voter suppression as well, right? Despite the fact that the black population of Georgia outvotes their demographic share.
Yeah. So for absentee ballots, you only have to have the last 4 digits of your social security number. So this law that they put into this is rather for an absentee ballot, you previously had to have just a signature, and it just had to match your signature on file from your registration, I'm guessing. Now you have to sign it, and you also have to put onto the form either your driver's license ID, state ID number, one of the two, or if you don't have either one of those, you can check a box that says, I don't have either one of those, and you have to write in your last 4 digits of your social security number to prove that it's you. If you don't have a social security number, you can check another box apparently, and then I don't remember what it was, but my belief was at that point, like, if you don't have fucking IDs or social security number, like, why are you voting?
Man, this is we on the right, we really, really enjoy the idea. I don't know if enjoy is the correct word, but we use the lens that the far left is actually the racist ones. Like, they're actually mostly the only racist ones left in the country, because they have the bigotry of low expectations. Like, they can't expect black people to know what the internet is. Black people can't get on the bus and get to the DMV to vote. Like, black people can't this, that, and the other thing. And it's like you're looking at that law. It's like, black people don't have social security IDs because they're not real people. It's like,
well, I think the news sites just haven't been reporting on that.
Yeah, no, I know
that is an option.
I know it's an oversight. I know every single social justice warrior who's going on about it didn't actually read the law. So whatever.
Yeah. So anyway, in my opinion, is it necessary? No. Is it an issue? No. I mean,
does it make the election more secure?
If your state has already decided that a photo ID is required at voting, is it a insane step to believe that the state is then going to require you to write down an ID number from your driver's license or state ID or the last 4 digits of your social security number when you send in your ballot? No, to me that is not.
Yes, I would say no.
Not an extension of voter restriction, right? It's less voter restrictive still to do an absentee ballot, in my opinion, than to show up at the polls. Right?
Yeah.
So it is restricting it in a way, but to me, it's not a major issue. Really. No. Like, I think the previous one we talked about is a larger issue.
Right. Like, I think that one was a small issue.
It's not a big one. I agree. It's just this one to me is, whatever. Okay. So the next point, absentee ballot applications, it is illegal to send them out to everybody. So during COVID year election, the state sent out absentee ballot applications to everybody, not absentee ballots, applications for an absentee ballot.
Gotcha.
Right?
Okay. Yep.
Which to me is a huge distinction. Like, that's been the argument in the media or on the right a lot, is you can't just send a ballot to everybody.
Right.
They don't.
Which some states did. Apparently not Georgia.
Okay, so in this particular case, Georgia, that wasn't one of them. Georgia sent out applications to everybody. Hey, would you like to vote absentee ballot? If so, fill this shit out and send it back to us. I don't see a problem with that. I actually think that's great. right?
Right.
It gets more people involved in front of something that says, hey, why don't you go out and vote? Even if you just want to do it from home, fill this out, right?
Well,
I see no fucking problem with that.
I think it's stupid because the more people that vote, the more the Democrats win.
Yeah. Well, I agree. That's probably why this is now in the bill, that it makes it illegal to send out an absentee ballot application for somebody that didn't request one. So now you have to apply for an application. Okay.
What?
Yeah.
You do?
You have to request a ballot, an absentee ballot application. They can't just send you one. Way to go, GOP.
That's hilarious. That's funny. I like it.
So I'm wondering, though, if they can mass send out an application to apply for an absentee ballot application. Because I don't think that is in the law. So they could.
Oh, it's so stupid. All of it is stupid.
So that one I think is got to be just politically focused. Like I can't imagine.
Well, I see Democrats in there too, right? Because one might argue like, hey, why can't they just apply for it online? And then the Democrats are like, nope, that'll suppress because poor people don't have the internet. Black people are poor. You know, it's like,
yeah, I'm sure you can still apply online. I would imagine that's available. I don't think that's out.
Well, what I'm saying is that there, even in that rule that swings towards the GOP side, I see maybe a Democrat.
There's extreme points of view.
Compromise.
So the next point to keep it moving here is the fewer drop boxes, right? And I know this is one that you're a little passionate about. As an example, based on the new law, Fulton County, which is where Atlanta is, right, the biggest Democratic voting county in the state, is going to be going from about 94 drop boxes down to 23. I think that the argument from the right is pretty valid in saying drop boxes didn't exist before 2020, so us limiting them isn't really like a huge step back. Where I do think that it is a pretty big limitation compared to 2020 isn't. So the number of drop boxes is one thing, right? Like if I got to go to the end of my block to throw something down in this drop box, that's way easier. But the other side of it is they now have to be inside of a government building. Government buildings are open only during business hours. So people that work like third shift and other,
something like that.
Goofy hours, it's going to be a lot more difficult for them to use them. So the interesting thing to me is, if you're looking at it from a political view, reducing drop boxes doesn't really help, I guess, because now those people are just going to fucking mail them in. And the argument is that the mail system is less secure than these drop boxes, right?
Yeah, but that's actually it. The security argument isn't the mail argument. The argument that we were hearing about mail from the left is that Trump was hobbling the mail system. So it's more of a left argument that having to send things through the mail is likely to clog things up. And once again, there was no evidence of that. Although there was like a grand total of 400 ballots that were lost in mailing facilities, and they went back through and found them. So it's like it's kind of like voter fraud. It really didn't sway anything either way.
400 was enough in like what? Yeah, in Georgia, would 400 wasn't enough.
Not even close.
Which state was it? There was one that was really damn close. Was it
Georgia.
Florida?
Yeah.
No, Florida. Florida in the Bush election and Gore election. That's the one I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
That was like 100 something votes.
I know. Everybody must have been pissed about swing states back then. I mean, they are every election, I guess, but
we were still in diapers, my friend. So yeah, I mean, so the point really on this one is they're reducing the number of drop boxes allowed based on population or voting facilities.
Right. Look,
early voting facilities.
Frankly, it's a concession that they're not all gone. It is a concession from the GOP that they're not all gone because they didn't exist before the pandemic.
Not necessarily. I mean, there wasn't a law about them before. Now there's a law
Yeah,
that
but they did-
specifically
yeah,
says you
okay,
can
that's-
only have so many.
There was
right?
no law because they didn't exist. Because
Yeah, I
drop
agree.
boxes are, it's sort of like a break in the chain of custody, kind of, if you look at it that way, right? You put something in a box and there's no person to monitor that box to make sure nothing's getting
I
tampered
think
with.
I think the appropriate path for this should have been, in my opinion, not as much the number of boxes. I think reducing the total number available is probably okay. Right now, it's 1 per 100,000 voters. So you think of like how big of an area. This actually fucks rural voters more, in my opinion. You got to travel way further to
Right.
get to a box in a
Right.
rural area if it's 1 per 100,000 than you do in a city.
I wonder if the boxes were even for rural. I was wondering about that. I mean, there's
I
a
don't
whole bunch
know.
of speculation here, but like for some
But-
reason, I just felt like rural they didn't get boxes. I thought boxes were for city, but I could be wrong.
But like,
But
in
you
my
know what,
opinion,
maybe
like
not.
what's wrong? What's wrong with like
Yeah.
having a box out front of the voting area, the voting facility, with a fucking camera on it? Like it's out in front. It's not inside the building, so you can access it at any time, or at least you can access a drop panel,
Right.
like an after hours. Here's my ballot panel that puts it into the box, but
Yeah,
the box
I'm
is inside the
I'm
facility.
sure that was debated. And it was probably
So I do think it's restrictive a little bit compared to what happened in 2020. But again, it's not like I don't feel like it's a massive thing.
yeah. Again,
I-
look,
none
it's not a
none of
huge,
these are generally, but they're
Again,
just trying to
every
change it
time
by
you-
5%, not half. You know,
every time you do something impersonal like that, where there's no physical human chain of custody, you open up rooms for insecurity. But again, it's really not that big a deal.
the mail system's worse.
I would
Like
agree.
if I was a
Republicans are not
voting,
big
if I
fan of
was
the mail system.
if I was looking to figure out a more secure way to get absentee ballots in, I would say, hey, we're putting these boxes in front of our facilities. They have cameras on them.
Yep.
You
And they
know,
drop
or
inside the
and
facility.
it drops into inside the facility. You can access it 24/7, and they're at
Oh,
every
you know
voting
what's- you know what's
facility.
another
They're at
thing
every
is-
voting precinct.
Ballot curing, right? So if you're not doing it in person, you're much more liable to do it incorrectly, right? Because you don't have somebody to ask, like, hey, what do you mean by put my name here? What does that mean, right?
Sorry,
you know,
sir. If you
Yeah.
asked that question, you were ineligible
right?
to
It's
vote.
like I have a list of 3 questions that if people ask me, I can actually slap them. Like it's right here, so you can see it. Like,
Yeah.
you're not
Yeah,
allowed
I mean,
to vote, sir.
I know voting absentee is more risky for that aspect. That's the choice they make. So
Right.
Um,
And again, just it's the meta. It's more voting means more low information voters and more Democrats.
wait,
I'm kidding.
I
Right, what's
thought I
next?
thought all Republicans were low information voters
Yeah, that's what you'd
Based-
think, wouldn't you?
based on education level statistics.
Listen, look, even if that's true, Republicans are dutiful. they
Republicans, I'm joking. That was a joke, by the way. I'm just making jokes. All right. Next topic. This one should be quick.
I'm
It
offended.
banned mobile voting centers.
I'm going to ban you.
So in 2020, they were driving around in RVs and giving mobile voting centers, like using them as mobile voting centers for
Did
people
you
to show
say
up and
banned
vote.
mobile voting?
It banned that. Yes.
Okay.
So I mean, I'm not that whatever. Like if they need it again, they'll just allow it again, right? Like,
Yeah.
it is what it is. To me, that's not a big deal. I got to read this note real quick. Early voting. Early voting defined hours. So it previously said early voting was during business hours. They changed that to say 9 to 5. And it's a big stink. People are now saying, it makes it so that people that work different hours, can't get in there and do it. That is everybody's understanding of business hours, right? They just clarified the term. To
It's
me,
like,
that's not a big deal.
if it's in the dictionary, it's 9 to 5.
Yeah. And they actually added, so in the past, most rural areas didn't offer a Saturday early voting day. But most of the urban areas did.
Yep.
They actually added a requirement now to say for every precinct you have to include one Saturday. I think one Saturday for early voting.
And then Sundays,
and
right?
It's not a requirement, but you're allowed to.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's not a requirement to also do it on Sundays, but you are allowed to also offer early voting on Sundays.
Hold on.
So-
So you're saying this Nazi bill expanded early voting?
In-person early voting, I would say yes. And the argument from the left on this one is that it expanded it for Republicans because urban centers, honestly, no, urban centers already offered Saturday and Sunday early voting, whereas rural areas didn't. So now rural areas are being forced to also offer
Wait.
Saturday early
So the
voting.
Democrats who are saying that more people voting is a virtue, it's just not if it's Republicans, right?
Yep, that's the argument, I'm guessing. Yeah. So in my opinion, this generally is fairly good, right? I mean, it's they only clarified a vague term, which I don't think vague terms are good in law. I'd rather things be clarified, and not that it was that vague to begin with, but regardless. And then they added a requirement to increase the amount of required days for early voting, but they still allow additional early voting days. So to me, this was a net positive for people in general to be able to vote.
People everywhere.
A big one that is huge everywhere: the third-party gift
Yes,
crime. Right,
it's my favorite one.
So within 150 feet of a voting facility or anyone waiting in line to vote, it is illegal to provide them gifts. So food, it even says specifically food, water, whatever, to solicit their vote, to solicit anything to them, right? It does not prohibit employees, people that are working for the voter registration,
your
co-workers, whatever,
members
can come out and give you water or whatever. It's
being
just,
like, hey, hold my place. I'm gonna go get a bottle of water real quick.
yeah,
Like,
it's just third party individuals being
specifically
prohibited.
political
So
parties.
I actually don't see much of an issue with this. I mean, it's nice that
because there's
I don't
no
mind that
issue.
people are there giving you water and shit. Like, that's great. But at the same time, and like when I go into the polling place, I've never had a problem. People are like, hey, are you Republican or Democrat? And you say whatever you are, and they say, okay, here's the list of people on your ticket, right? They can no longer give you that, which I actually found benefit in, right? If I wanted to vote whole ticket, like just party ticket, now I had a list. So I think that hurts both sides a little bit on that front only. But those people can just stand more than 150 feet back or whatever, and like no big deal. And nobody ever gave me water, but I never waited in line either. If I saw a big fat ass line, I'd probably drive on. Well, vote next 4 years. 4 years from now, I'll vote again. Like, what else?
You're in a swing state too. That's very irresponsible of you. At least I'm in a deep blue state. Actually,
I don't.
Deep blue purple.
If it was today, I probably wouldn't. If you'd have caught me 3 or 4 years ago, I probably would have drove on.
Okay,
but
pop question real quick. If it was between Joe Biden and Ron DeSantis, who would you vote for?
I don't know enough about Ron DeSantis. He's the Florida guy, right?
That's my favorite, man. I'm voting for him.
He's the Florida guy, right?
He's the Florida guy. I love him, man.
Yeah.
He's like a lot of people are saying he's all the stuff that people love about Trump, and he's none of the stuff that they hate about Trump, like the Twitter and the childish sentences.
There wasn't much I loved about Trump, though.
I granted, but
so I don't have any love for Biden either.
I know that's why I'm. That's
I'll tell you what.
Let
me table that question. Okay. Remind me before the next podcast. I'll do some DeSantis digging, and then I'll get back with you.
All right, I'll send you some choice bits.
All right. So no gifts, right? So I actually think it's probably a positive, right? I mean, generally there's no soliciting laws all over the fucking place. This just specifies also no soliciting to people waiting in line to.
Yeah, I don't really understand the vitriol around this one. Like, so this one, it seems to me less politically calculated, right? Because the meta doesn't even really come into this. Because I think you and I both agree. Even people walking around handing out the bottles of water probably not going to change anything. So it's not like this is something that I feel like is benefiting Democrats that the Republicans are removing. I feel like this is just like a somewhat sensible good law or a good rule to put in that I don't think is going to benefit either party.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
why-
I
what's
don't
the
know
big
how
stink?
it benefits.
Right,
I don't
this
know how
doesn't
it
even go
benefits
into the
anyone
meta, right? This
particularly.
is just like
Yeah.
on the issue, it's not a big deal, and in the meta, it doesn't affect anything. So what's like?
Yeah.
And it's like the big one. It's like dirty GOP Jim Crow Republicans are preventing, poor, thirsty, starving Democrats in line and watching them wither away. It's like,
Yeah.
well, I get it. It's hot in Georgia.
I think it's kind of BS, and I think or I'm sorry. Let me say I misspoke. I don't actually think it's an issue.
Right.
What I wish you could do is if like I just want to be a generous dude. I was like, hey, you know what? I got some extra money, and I like that people vote, and I want to say thanks.
Yeah.
I can go set up a fucking cooler of water bottles or something next to the line that people can have.
Yeah. I think
without
you can actually
ever talking
still
to
do
them.
that.
You can't.
No, I think you
That'd be-
can
that'd
if you're
be
not in
giving.
a party.
No, it's not about being political or being in a party. You
And
can't.
if you're not
as a-
soliciting,
It doesn't matter. A third party person cannot give you a gift while you're waiting in line.
all right.
So I could set up shop 150 feet away with a
Right.
billboard behind me that says free
Couple
water.
measuring
I don't
tapes.
care who you're voting for, But yeah. So anyway, the next one is it used to be that if you went to the wrong precinct to vote, so maybe you live in the middle of two of them, and then they do switch them occasionally, which was part of what a lot of these news articles I was reading was talking about, where last year you voted at this place and now you have to go to this other place and you got it wrong. So you go to this place to vote and it turns out that's not the right place. The other place is halfway across town. It used to be that you could just do a what's the other ballot called? The
Supplemental?
Yeah, it's not the right word, but yeah, that one.
No. Yeah, it's something. Yeah, it's a ballot.
It's
not the right one. But
anyway, it's a special ballot that's basically like they got to review it and make sure that you didn't actually vote at the other place, and if you didn't, then this one would count.
Yeah. I remember there's some issues with this.
And so, 40 from the stats I saw, like 44% of those ballots were because of this case, of this reason. All of the other reasons that people vote on this, like, which is like one of them is you show up to vote and they're like, hey, we show that you voted already absentee.
Yeah.
You can still fill out this supplemental ballot. Is that what it was?
It might be.
Anyway, you can still fill out this one, and then they'll say, okay, if you didn't actually vote by absentee, then this one counts, right? 44% of all those were for people showing up at the wrong location. Used to be you show up at the wrong location, you can fill one of those out. Now it's if you show up at the wrong location before 5 p.m., you have to go to the correct location. If it's after 5 p.m., but before that ballot location closed, then they will accept your whatever ballot.
So that sounds to me like, again, in the meta, obviously reducing voting a little bit, but in the actual issue, that sounds like reducing administrative burden a little bit.
Maybe. I think my point of view on this one is generally like, in this fucking day and age, just let people fucking vote. Like, how hard is it to? It's all digital. You're scanning this shit in. It all has barcodes. It's all digitized. It doesn't fucking matter which block they scanned it on, right? Like, scan it in.
Could be that Jesus. Could be, but each polling place, like as we learned, all of the voting data, so like rosters or people that you expect to be voting, all of that stuff there's no network to share this kind of data, right? So, yeah, you're right. But I mean, you just fill it out and then do it later. I mean, again, like I think the only thing is administrivia. That's probably it.
It's a little more administrative work, but to be honest with you, like the government's there to support me voting. Like, this is ridiculous. I get that you have to have precincts. You can't just have people going wherever they want because you need to try and even out number of people at different locations. You don't have too many people waiting in line at one place and nobody another, whatever. But the odd person that goes to the wrong place, or maybe they're out on the wrong side of town. Their house is here, but their employer's there, and they work hours that basically make it like this is the easiest one to get to. Like,
I have in my state, blue state, right? not very much Jim Crow going on here that I'm aware of. We have that as well. Like I can't just go to the wrong polling station. I have to go to the correct one, and I can.
If you go,
there.
what happens if you go to the wrong one?
I can't vote there.
Do you know that?
Never tried, honestly.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
why would
you
they- like, why would
maybe
you say
maybe
that I
you
have to
can
go to
just
a
do
place?
that supplemental ballot, whatever it's called.
Look, it could be. Could be.
I don't actually know either. I've always gone to the right one. But the point is, I'm not talking about what everybody else does.
Yeah, because you're
Let's
responsible.
talk about
And I want you voting because you're responsible.
let's talk about this specific issue. Like, in my opinion, this one is just a negative. I don't know that it's, outside of the political focus of like, hey, I want to limit people from voting. To me, this was just kind of BS. Like, just let them fucking
Yeah,
vote.
I got nothing for you, man. It could be right.
Yeah. So the next one is, it's harder to extend voting hours. So in the past, if something happened, a judge could, like, say voting hours are supposed to end at 8 p.m. or whatever time it is. Say the power goes out or something for a half hour.
Right.
A judge could then rule, hey, power went out for a half hour. We're going to extend voting hours for an hour, 2 hours, whatever it is, to compensate. Now, I think it's a higher level judge that has to rule. That's not 100%. I think that's what it was, but it is a high level judge that has to rule now. I'm not sure if it always was. And the second thing is they now limited it to, if the power went out for a half hour, you can only extend voting time by a half hour. You can't, like, willy-nilly how much time you can extend it by. And so I'm not like 100% against that, but I also think, like, sometimes it's, you show up, you're like, hey, it's my lunch hour. You show up to vote and the polling station's closed and you end up not being able to vote, and then you got to go home. And then,
Yeah. Yeah, there's a couple things like that. There's also the fact that a half-hour interruption is not just a half-hour interruption, right? You got to shut things down, and then you have to start things back up.
Yeah.
Which is time. So to me, so the meta on this is like, it's, again, restriction. The ground level stuff, it's to me, this sounds like the Republicans. It's fairly reasonable, but it's tailored to exactly as much as they could get away with and still be reasonable with this restriction.
Yeah, like I don't see the point in this one. Like, let a fucking judge determine what needs to happen. This should be a small enough occasion that it shouldn't be a big deal.
Let a judge decide.
Yeah. So I'm not really in support of that one at all. I think that's kind of some bullshit. One thing that they did that I think is a step up, from my understanding, is absentee ballots can be prepared prior to the close of the ballots.
Why not? I feel like they're just erasing a kink that was there unnecessary.
Yeah. So in the past, they I think they could, like, open the envelope, but they couldn't actually take out the inner envelope or something. Like, so the only restriction now is you can't do any tallying. You can basically prepare everything to just be run through the machines.
Yeah.
But you can't do any tallying whatsoever until the polls close. Which I think you could be able to tally it ahead of time. I don't give a shit, but I understand the thought process behind not.
Yeah, no, this is 100%, like, this is one of the GOP talking points, and it's political for some reason. And I'm sure I could figure it out why if I thought about it. I don't really care. It's we want to have an election night. Like, we don't want to be staying up all night, or we don't want to have to be waiting a couple days for stuff to get done just because we don't want to start counting early. It's like, no, count the ballots you have. Like, let's get these results in. And if it wasn't political, I think just about every single person in the country would agree with that.
But the left agrees too. The left is like, count them when you get them, basically, right?
Yeah,
at least I think that's what they're like. So
maybe you're completely right about that. But
so I think all in all, but this is a move in the direction of helpful to voting, I guess.
Well, it's not going to make more people vote or less people vote. It
I
will
think
ease congestion on the voting night.
Yeah. And I think one thing that this particular passage in the bill did do, though, is I think it made it a little bit more strict on everything has to be counted by this date or this time, which I think is basically,
again. So they're trying to rush things up.
So they said, yep, you can start processing earlier, but then they said, on top of that, though, everything that's not counted by this time basically doesn't count. Or I don't know how that, like, dude. Honestly, I don't know how that's going to work out. If a fucking vote was received in time and you from an administrative standpoint weren't able to count it in time, and so you're like, "Whoop, that doesn't count." That ain't gonna fucking fly. Like that's just not gonna fly.
Exactly, especially because the people who are probably going to run out of time are the cities, right? Which is more democratic. I could definitely see a complaint against that. So I would hope that the language of this bill is to set the deadline that's not arbitrary. Like you set the deadline and then you allow for the application of resources to meet the deadline rather than just using the deadline as a hard cutoff.
Yeah. So, but generally, hey, start unpacking and getting them ready earlier. Good thing.
Yeah, I like that.
Next one: no third-party funding to elect election committees and people. And that's also, I think they're also going to be reviewing that. So, right now, the rule is that the election officials, the committees, the groups, they can't accept any funding outside of state-provided funding. So in 2020, you saw where like Mark Zuckerberg was giving all this money to help, election groups.
And it created the appearance of conflict of interest, even if there wasn't.
Right. So they passed a law that basically says you can't accept money from anybody from the state. But in that, it also says that the committee is going to be reviewing policy to allow unbiased third-party donations. Right. So if you want to donate to the election committee.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a wash thing.
Because I was thinking, like, for some reason, it just popped into my head, like a local guy who made it real well. He's got his landscaping company that he started when he was 20. He's 50 years old now. He's doing real well. And he's like into the community now. And he just wants to give money to the committee. Like, those are the kind of people I'm thinking about. Like, that absolutely should be allowed. And it's probably even very helpful and kind of necessary, And that's like a civic duty. That's a good thing.
Yeah, they're going to review that. It looks like they're going to review that and allow it at some point. They just didn't have the right policy in place at the time. So they said, for now, nothing. Yeah. I don't think it was necessary. Like, just...
Yeah, I still think, like, even just for, again, I'm using this word a lot, even just for, like, the like, if it's the meta, like, you take this one step up, even if Mark Zuckerberg wasn't influencing people in the way that people, conspiracy theorists would say, or people would say, the appearance of it is something that should be mitigated, right? You shouldn't look like you're allowing corruption, right? Because people will react the way that they will. People aren't going to change, right?
Yeah, I see that argument. Yeah, I'm not. I don't care about this particular part of the bill. I think it's whatever. The next one. Total bullshit. This should never have been put in there. The attorney general is to be is either allowed to or required to. I'm not sure which one. I can't recall. Create a hotline for people to call into if they see or hear of something that is aligned with a voter fraud or something along those lines.
What's wrong with that, Tim? Come on.
Total bullshit. If
what do
you see
mean?
something that's fraud, you got to keep your mouth shut. Tell nobody. Like, who gives a shit about that? Like, that's actually great, right?
That's funny.
Like, here's an official place you can get a hold of somebody and feel confident that your issue or your voice,
right.
What you thought you may have saw, whatever's going to be heard.
Right. Look.
No problem with that.
Like, as far as the average Republican, I'm probably a little bit more towards the voter fraud didn't happen on a large scale, right? And like, even so, this is still, again, if you step out once, as far as the optics go, this is good optics, right? This is like, even if there aren't problems, and most people will concede, a lot of people will concede that voter fraud likely didn't affect the last election. This is good optics. And on top of it, this is functional and you can do good with it. You can actually unearth actual voter fraud. So it's kind of a win-win.
Yeah. I mean, it's, so interestingly, some of the points that we had before was, well, we need to put this particular rule into place to reduce administrative cost and effort. Yep. This is purely adding administrative cost and effort.
Oh, sure.
So it's kind of defeats some of those arguments, but outside of that, I think it's a general positive, right? If we can do stuff to give people a place to voice their fears and opinions that they feel like is going to be valuable and legit, let's do it. So
Crowder's going to call in about Sharpie Gate. they're using the wrong Sharpies for Republicans. Shut up, dude.
All right, so I have terrible handwriting. So, okay. The next three all kind
know
of
you can
run
write.
together. I
What?
can't. It's hieroglyphics.
Oh, okay.
The guy.
All right, what did
holding
you
the
say? I'm
bird
sorry.
like this is a-
So rude.
all right, so the next three all kind of tie together. The last one's in this, in a way. So the first one is they created a new position called the chair of the State of Elections Board, and all of the power that that particular person has now been removed from the Secretary of State.
Okay.
The Secretary of State has also been removed from voting on the election board. So basically, the Secretary of State in Georgia gave a big fuck you finger to Trump, and the GOP controlled legislator is removing all election power basically from the Secretary of State in Georgia. So this is one particular step in that direction. Another step in the direction of the legislation branch this bill giving the legislation branch more power is the legislators can now suspend county election officials. So if a county election official does certain things incorrectly, the state legislator can now come in and say, "Yep, you're no longer the county election official. This person is." From what I understand, I didn't read the whole bill word for word. There are some pretty strong restrictions, like specific things that somebody has to do. I think that what I read was there has to be 3 specific strikes against policy before they can suspend them. They can't just willy-nilly do it.
Right.
But it's adding power for, state legislation to be able to go in and control county electors, election officials.
Yeah, that seems to me just like a state. Again, there's probably the actual issue itself, but that just seems like state legislature versus executive branch power tussle.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about it. Like at first, I'm like, "Oh, you can't take power from one and give it to the other," and then I'm like, "Well, I don't know if it's better or not."
It happens all the time. I'm sure.
So
it seems to me like there is probably something a little bit more to it that we don't know about. I think that's all going to be a lot of internal Georgia politics. I know you could probably impose some of the election stuff onto that, like some of the big stuff, but I think all of those people up there were Republicans, even if they weren't agreeing with Trump. And that would go for the Georgia GOP as well. Like, I'm sure some of them agree and disagree with Trump in the same way that those election officials did.
So those 3 things, new position, taking the power away from the Secretary of State, removing the Secretary of State's ability to vote, and then also taking the ability to do that. So all of those are adding election power to the legislation, because the legislation is now the ones that appoint that chair of the State of Election Board. So, and then the last thing that I had was a shorter runoff election. If a runoff election occurs, in the past it was 9 weeks, I think. Now it's 4, something like that. So they shortened it from 9 weeks to 4 weeks. I generally think that's a good thing. I actually would have liked to see them change it from a runoff election to the whatever method, which is, you vote for who you like the most, and then who you like the second most, and then the tiered ranking thing.
That's a good one. That's a good system.
But regardless, I don't really have a problem with it. I think it's going to make it a little more administratively difficult, and there's a lot less campaigning and stuff that happens in the interim, which to me isn't bad. Like, I think if I voted the first time,
you're right, and you've
I
already
liked somebody,
done your campaigning and stuff. But I mean, honest one, that one's kind of neither here nor there. I suspect since the GOP did it, I bet that was a popular thing. I bet that was popular. Like, get it over with. Why are we waiting this long?
So that's the 15 or 16 things that I could find that bill changed. In general, my opinion is meh. Like, yeah, I do actually find it to be probably a little restrictive in some topics that don't really need to be. There's also some positive things in there, in my opinion, as far as getting things done. So at the end of the day, I'm kind of meh on it. I don't really understand the full blowout that's happening. other than from the perspective of trying to make a point to say, hey, let's not move in the direction of making anything more restrictive for voting. But yeah, what do you think?
I think basically Georgia should restrict it so that only I'm allowed to vote.
Bro,
That's
you don't
it.
even live in Georgia.
Yeah, well, that's my opinion. You asked my opinion.
If I move to Georgia, then I am the only one allowed to vote. Would you vote for yourself? That's the question.
No, dog. No. I was thinking about this. Like, I'm so glad I'm not in charge of changing all of this stuff. You know, this actually comes from like and I'm not really a humble person, but there are some times I have flashes of humility, right? Where it's like, well, I should believe this. But it's like I was thinking about like what would it be like if I got involved in my local politics? It's like, well, what would I try to do? Be the governor right away? And it's like, well, I don't even understand the problems that my local community is facing. I really don't. Like, I don't know what, structural problems, this portion of Connecticut's having. So I would probably have to start small, right? I would have to like have some humility and get in and just like, work some fundraisers or, get involved with the town hall and see what they're doing and like work my way up and like do it the right way instead of just jumping right from I'm this individual. I have this opinion. I'm going to run for that office to do that thing. And, I think ironically, what I just said, that second part is probably how you have to do it. And that's how probably most people get elected because you just be confident about it. And then people just vote for you if it's your thing, So, short story about why I'm never going to be the mayor of where I live.
So I got a question for you.
Yeah.
If you're a Bernie supporter and you go to his rallies, how bad must it suck to be this guy?
That guy.
Jesus Christ.
I feel like he does it to himself, almost, right? I don't know. You're like, you're not going to change your glasses just because it looks like Bernie's glasses, and it actually does. That guy just straight up looks like Bernie.
He does, dude. He looks like Bernie's.
My God,
man. He has to wear a shirt. It's like, I'm not Bernie. And then people are still like, yeah, you are, dude. You're just fucking wearing that shirt. Like, I know.
And he's like, it's not just that he looks like him and he's wearing the shirt. It's like the woman behind him has a Bernie sign. He's at a Bernie rally. That's just crazy. Like,
yeah, exactly. That's what I'm like. Like, if I was that guy, I would not go to Bernie rally. Or I would with like a bucket underneath, like put some money in here. Like I'm an impersonator.
Well, to be fair, that guy looks like an old socialist. So, potato.
Oh man!
All right. Well, I think we're probably a couple minutes early. Unless you wanted to flash up another meme there, I think we could probably call it.
I mean, I've got a ton left, but we don't really. Let me see if I have anything that just has to be shown. Oh, well, that one's not going to because I hit the X. Oh, you know what? I want to show this one. It's more serious. It's not really as politically hot. It's more morally moral discussion, but I think it's worth before we go. So for those just listening, I'll read it out. It's got a picture of a black man. I'm not sure if this is Brian Banks or not in the picture, but it says, Brian Banks did 5 years in jail and had to register as a sex offender after a high school girl falsely accused him of rape because she didn't want her mom to know she had sex. She also sued the school district and won $1.5 million. Years later, she met with Banks and admitted to him, I'm adding to him in there, she lied. He taped the conversation. His conviction was overturned, and the school district sued her back for $2.6 million. So great. At the end of the day, like she didn't get the money, and he's out of prison. But dude lost 5 years of his life.
Yeah,
probably a ton of relationships with friends and family and other things. What untold amount of emotional scarring and like change in your person because of this.
Yeah,
I think like I am all about not having any sort of, victimization of people, male, female, whatever. Like if a girl comes out and says, hey, I was raped, we need to take it seriously. We need to look at, all those things 100%. But at the same time, like, we have to do what we can do to increase our technology, increase our approaches, to try and limit the amount of negative and false imprisonments that we have, because
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things I think about this, but like, so number one, memes like this is, since we have access to the internet, so we get to see the worst cases, and that is one of the worst case scenarios. So we see it and it sticks with us and it goes viral. And it's memes like that drive the men's liberation movement, sort of like men's rights activists who are like,
yeah,
we're focusing on women, but like men have all these kinds of problems, like for not getting believed in court, losing custody battles, all that kind of stuff. And so, like, right there, that meme is driving, a couple 100,000 new men's lib recruits over to that corner.
Yeah.
But it's like, and maybe we can do this. Maybe we can do this next week. Talk about Title IX in college campuses. But there needs to be a serious conversation that doesn't involve any ideology about how to handle sexual assault allegations, right? Sexual harassment allegations. It needs to be handled with, you either need to do due process or you need to not ruin either party's life, right? It has to be that way. You have to use due process.
It's such a weird, not weird, that's not the right word. It's such a difficult topic to approach. I mean,
yeah,
in most of these cases, it's
sides.
just one word against another, and
sometimes, yeah.
And I mean, right, I shouldn't say most, but in a significant number of the cases, I don't know what percentage, right?
Right.
Either the girl was embarrassed and didn't go and get tested the next day when there was still DNA evidence, or one of a million different reasons that there's no other evidence available other than I say this happened and he says it didn't.
Yeah.
And how do you like? How do you go through and find the right balance there, right? Like if you say, well, we need more proof to convict somebody, then it opens the door for these predators to try and take advantage of these situations. But then if you go through and say, well, we're always going to believe the accuser, then it opens the door for situations like the example we just gave, where somebody may use the situation to their advantage and to punish somebody. And we talked about it a little bit earlier, where police officers have this power to, their word is held as gospel compared to the, average citizen. And that's an immense amount of power that I think needs to be controlled. I love the body cam thing, right?
Yeah. It's
gives
great.
you evidence. Yeah. But if you're going to give that power to, I mean, just for sake of argument for this discussion, females, right? Anything the female says is true. There has to be some other sort of balance there, I think, because it is an immense amount of power.
If you really want to drive people into the right, and then consequently some of them into the far right, just go ahead and keep saying believe all women. Like just how insipid can you be? Like, obviously it's more complicated than that. If you don't think it is, you probably shouldn't vote. But that's voter suppression. So,
yeah. So anyway, I thought that one hit me when I saw that one. I wanted to share it. I'm all about using technology. I think we should start using lie detectors as something that's more important and more trusted. And other technology that goes along with that I probably don't know about.
I agree, and you know what? And just my closing thought on that, I don't think it's purely a technology thing. Here's what I'm going to say. Like, unless there was some confluence of events, some perfect storm that just happened to frame him in a particular way that made it look like he did this, how did he go to jail without reasonable doubt, right? So if he actually didn't do it, how did they get the jury to where there was no reasonable doubt? Because that's our standard, right? There should have been beyond a reasonable doubt in the jury's mind that he did that. And it turns out he actually didn't do that. So how did that gap between he didn't do it turn into there is no reasonable doubt that he didn't do it? Right?
Because it's a jury of your peers. The problem is, and this is my logical mathematical mind coming at this, this is a jury of your peers. It's not a jury of properly trained and prepared jurors.
Psychologists, yeah.
And so what you're doing is, let's say 1% of the population will always believe whatever the accuser says. But 99% of the population is a great juror, let's just say, right? And that's not the case, but let's just say. Statistics show eventually you're going to run across a jury that's comprised 100% of the 1% that will always believe the accuser, right?
Yeah, that's true. They generally try to work those people out. So
they do, yeah.
It wouldn't be a random scattering. They do try to get those people out by asking good questions.
But would you also say that my percentages are extremely skewed?
Yes, of course. Yeah. Like, I think most people, I think actually the majority of people are biased one way or the other.
Yeah. So I think, on one hand, I think we need to have jury of our peers. And I think, the way we do it is pretty appropriate. And we offer training. Right. We offer training and things to jurors. They try and, teach them as they're getting onto the jury, like, hey, this is how you need to think. This is how you need to approach it. But, maybe we need to be a little more diligent up front and say, hey, I don't know if you've ever been on a jury selection panel. No. I have. I've actually never made it into a case. Just my number was never called.
But I was in the Navy, so.
Yeah, no, I got called down and sat in the room for several weeks, a couple times, but never got called. I got called one time into the courtroom, and then they needed like 10 jurors, and I was number 13, and they got the 10 they needed by like number 12 or something. Yeah. So
no, they really said no gingers, didn't they?
They did. Yeah, they're like, you have to have a soul.
You can't fool me, man.
If you don't have a soul, you can't. So, right. But anyway, I've never been on. But the point being, like, maybe they need to do something like extend that a little bit and say, hey, you're on jury selection for a month or two, and you're going to get this extensive training that we don't currently offer, that helps to make sure that people
the problem
are
with chasing
doing it
utopia,
the right way.
You get diminishing returns. That would be hard. That would be hard to do. Be a lot of resources.
Dude, I'm live spitballing. Anyone watching?
I know.
You saw some live spitballs right there. But yeah, it churns my stomach, the thought of somebody getting put in prison, falsely imprisoned. It churns my stomach, dude. That's one of the worst things that I can imagine happening to somebody, or to me, to anybody.
Hey, that's why Mike Pence doesn't eat alone with any of his female staffers.
Sounds smart.
Yeah, smart man. He got lambasted for that. All right, that's it for me.
Me as well. Appreciate everyone that's stuck with us this lengthy conversation, but it was enjoyable for me.
Yeah,
so
I had a great time.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, please click a like, a subscribe, a bell, anything that can help us to know that you enjoyed it so we can continue doing it. If you didn't enjoy it, click the thumbs down, leave us a comment, say, hey, I don't like your beard, dude. So whatever.
Which is like, that's going to be the likely comment. I understand.
Yeah.
Let us him his literacy courses. I know it's expensive.
Hey, it's coming. We need 100,000 likes, and then
then we can afford to get him his literacy course.
Let us know what you think. Give us suggestions, comments, anything. We're open. We try and read all the comments and things like that. So let us know. And until next time, peace.
Peace out.